Today, we're redesigning the Internet Movie Database. I know I've been getting lots of recommendations in the comments and they're in the works, but I've been meaning to do this one for quite a while because all the time I'm on IMDb just looking for interesting new movies to watch and interesting gems that I might have missed. And I'm always kind of shocked at how bad the user interface is. And at the end of the day, really, it's not abysmal, right? But it does feel quite dated and puts a whole bunch of information in your face at once, such that you're just kind of overwhelmed. If you're noticing a trend in the things I redesign, information overwhelm is a problem that plagues most web interfaces. So we're going to take a stab at redesigning this, specifically the individual movie page, and see how it goes. And we've got our style guide here with all their brand colors pulled over, and we're going to use Adele Sans, which is a very kind of relaxed, friendly sans font, which fits the vibe of IMDb quite well. And then, of course, we've got our user stories on here. At the end of the day, with IMDb, I want to learn whether or not I want to watch a given movie. And there's a whole bunch of criteria that ultimately meet that need. And I want to search for other movies on the site to find other interesting movies I might want to watch. And I want to be able to search for other movies on the site so that I can see what the reviews are for them, or perhaps, check them out after a recommendation in person. When I'm ready, I want to figure out where I can purchase that movie. I want to see other similar movies on that screen. And, as a user, I don't necessarily want to view advertisements for IMDbPro where it makes sense. But given that, websites are ultimately a commercial experience for most companies, we kind of need to find a way to work in their premium offering somehow. So going to take a crack at it and see what we come back with. Hang in there, folks. Should be a fun one. Here we're handling the primary user story of allowing users to search for movies and TV shows throughout IMDb, but I also noticed that on the existing site they gate the main navigation behind a menu button which opens a full screen overlay, and I don't want to do that in this UI. So what I want to do is include the navigation links in addition to the navigation controls like searching and signing up. And oftentimes when you want to do that, you can feel like you're trying to cram way too much into the header. And a good solution that I generally recommend for this is to just create two rows in the header and put the navigation links below the controls. Generally speaking, this kind of solves that problem really well and allows users to both navigate and use the controls fairly easily in a relatively contained header. Other than the breadcrumbs, which are a pretty standard navigational practice, nothing really jumped out to me in the hero section as being incorrectly designed. So largely, a lot of this is going to be based on the existing UI. I'm just going to be tweaking things about and rearranging them in a manner that hopefully makes more sense. And you'll see that come together in the next couple of minutes. Since there's really no foundational changes here, I'm going to skip forward to the part where things start getting interesting. This is a common design pattern when you have one call to action that has many forms of resolving itself. For example, there's a button here that says buy on Amazon, but we all know there's many different places you can buy movies. So this drop down implies to the user, hey, if you're not cool with buying on Prime Video or Amazon, there are other alternatives, and you engage with that by clicking on the drop down here. Since movie posters are generally very specific dimensions, I felt like floating it over the image here made a lot of sense. It's an interesting piece of visual flair, but ultimately I changed my mind on this because it's occluding one of the most important images here, and we can still get the same effect of drawing the user's attention by placing it elsewhere on the screen, which you'll see shortly. Initially, I thought that putting film details here would be appropriate because people want to get the information they need to make a decision. But then I thought it might be a little bit premature. At this point, many users will probably still be kind of on the fence as to whether or not they want to commit to learning more about this particular movie. So we need to do a little more to build that emotional engagement first. So I ultimately decide that we need to put a little bit more focus on the interesting parts of the movie first. So that's why we're putting this tag on the thumbnail here, which indicates that this is the #1 rated movie of all time on IMDb, and then we're ultimately going to be including much more imagery off to the right to get people emotionally engaged first. And generally speaking, whenever you want to get people emotionally engaged, you want to lean on things like really interesting imagery and very rich, verbose copy. There are a lot of movies out there, and one of the easiest ways that people disambiguate between movies they're probably never going to see and movies that they're going to watch is whether or not an actor or actress is present in that movie with whom they're familiar with. If you really like a particular actor, you're just more likely to watch that particular movie. So having the cast displayed immediately under the movie metadata here made a lot of sense. Here I'm realizing that unlike the featured hero with all the imagery and the videos, there's just no reason to have the cast list take up the full width of the screen. It's not that important. So placing it side by side with something else, which ultimately ends up being the story summary, makes a lot more sense to me, and I think would make the browsing experience from a user's perspective much more intuitive. I've talked about this before on the channel, but I think that advertisement on web services really needs a big overhaul. You can make adverts work in favor of the user and the business if you just kind of give them a little bit of the value that they're expected to experience should they opt into whatever service you're trying to advertise. So here what we're doing is we're hiding some of the non-essential information about the movie, like the trivia or frequently asked questions, behind the paywall. Just like, hey, look, here's all the essential information about the movie, but if you want to dig into the trivia, that's something that's only available to premium subscribers, and I think that's totally reasonable. However, later I realized that this is a little too early in the flow to be broadcasting paid or some kind of paywall, so we ultimately moved this farther down. But I just want to underscore that this type of advertising is generally the more effective type of advertising, as opposed to just a big block that's advertising something that's totally irrelevant to the user. Quite like the way that they had their metadata, or I guess secondary metadata, hanging out underneath the storyline block on the existing site. So I'm taking that, copying over to the new UI, and just tidying up the spacing a little bit so that it looks more cohesive. And of course, no single page advertising a product or service would be complete without verifiable and real user reviews. So here we're just showing one featured user review and then illustrating to the user that there's many more that they can browse if they want to. And of course, if the primary goal of a page like this is to get a user to watch a particular movie, then it seems to just make sense to show them other similar movies they may like. Maybe they're just not interested in watching Shawshank Redemption right now because, you know, they just don't want to cry that night. So we're going to put some other suggestions in there that might be more fun or more action-oriented, but are still kind of a similar vibe, so the user can still get something out of their browsing experience. Okay, this has been my longest recording ever. We're looking at about just over 3 hours of raw footage here. And yeah, it goes to show you that, honestly, I think I was being a little bit too harsh with the original IMDb design. They clearly put a lot of thought into it, and subsequently, trying to make it better took a lot longer than expected. But ultimately, I think we're at a place where the information that is most relevant to most people that are consuming stuff on IMDb is present to them in a manner that makes sense. So we've got, of course, the main hero image that kind of encapsulates the main story of the show, or excuse me, of the movie. This could also be an autoplay video or something. And then we've got the option to play the trailer, brief synopsis, or a brief little blurb about the movie, any sorts of anything notable that you want to call out about any particular movies there, an arrangement of different images, and then the metadata, a quick storyline synopsis, the cast, user reviews, trivia, gated behind an actual call to action to their premium service. I feel like this is a more appropriate way to handle that kind of thing. And then a list of more movies like this for things that people might want to consume in their free time. If you like The Shawshank Redemption, you'll probably also like these as well. So that's where I'm at with this. Of course, let me know if you disagree with any of the design decisions in the comments, if you would have done something a different way. And yeah, hope this one was useful for you. I hope you found some little nugget of design knowledge to help your next project. And have a lovely week, guys. I'll see you next Tuesday.